Springfield's Talk 1041. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. It is Wednesday. My name is Nick Reed, streaming live KSGF.com. One of the big political items there is going to be a great deal of discussion on today is this vote that took place in Virginia in which, despite the Constitution saying otherwise, the state is going to take what has been a relatively even split, though leaning blue, pretty much in line with how the vote takes place in Virginia of the allotment of congressional seats there. It's been 6-5. And again, that's pretty much in line. It leans a little favorably towards the Democrats. Kamala Harris won less than 52% in Virginia during the last election. And so the 6-5 gives a slight advantage, but they have decided to vote and switch that up, gerrymander it, so it's 9-1, 10-1. 10 Democrats will now, by way of the redistricting, win those elections to one Republican. So it's, again, when you can't win elections on the issues, you rig the elections. And this is just one of the many forms that Democrats have taken. And this isn't anything new. They've done this for years. And then when Texas finally, at the urging, one may say, of President Trump, Republicans began to fight fire with fire. Democrats pretended as if this was some new thing that Republicans invented, so we have to fight back, when it's something that Democrats have been doing for generations. This has been, I think it's the 1800s, that this first became a tactic that was recognized. And it's not to say that there aren't times in which Republicans use it, but Democrats have used it to the extent of which a lot of states, Republicans virtually have absolutely no representation whatsoever. They have no hope. They have no chance of ever having any sort of meaningful representation in their state. And so when, again, Texas decided, okay, fire with fire on this one, then the Democrats, as they always do, anytime Republicans say, we're going to play by your rules, Democrats go nuts. Because they have very long been accustomed to Republicans handcuffing themselves. Democrats break rules, they stretch rules, they find loopholes within the rules, and Republicans have long said, well, two wrongs don't make a right. And while some may agree with that, Donald Trump came along and said, two wrongs may not make a right, but it also means you lose a lot. You give an advantage to the opposition. And so that's where he said Republicans need to step up. And then Democrats, of course, have just gone. They're essentially determining wherever it is that they can that Republicans will have zero representation, virtually speaking. I mean, maybe 1 out of 10, like Virginia. Now, the wording is hilariously North Korea style for the vote that took place. And many believe, because of the wording itself, which we'll talk about a little bit later, the courts are going to clearly overturn this. Because it essentially said, hey, do you want fair elections? If so, you have to hand Democrats 10 of these seats and leave Republicans only 1. If you want fair elections. And the wording fair being utilized in that ballot language is what most people feel, legally speaking, is going to cause it to be overturned. But we'll get into that coming up. And, of course, it'll come as no shock. There's a lot of Soros-linked dark money. Like most things, Democrats run around out one side of their mouth talking about the evils of dark money and how we need to ban it, yet they, again, are victorious in one of their many efforts due to dark money. And this is the game that they continue to play, and much of that, of course, is because the media promotes it and covers for them, and so you have just a lot of Americans that don't realize the behind-the-scenes stuff on all of this. Also, the city of Springfield is seeking to build trust as events bring departments to neighborhoods. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. The Pyramid Roofing Company text line 447-KSGF. If you want to text in any thoughts, any questions, feel free to do so. Right now, the latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First, meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see partly sunny skies with a high near 75. Tonight, mostly clear with a low around 58. For your Thursday, mostly sunny with a high near 79. And taking a look at Friday, an 80% chance of showers with a high near 76.
I was going to ask, I mean, I knew the answer, but just for fun, I was going to ask who ruffled more feathers while I was away, fill in guest hosts Darren Chappell or James Clary. But I can tell by the text line it was James Clary.
I don't know. I would say it was pretty split.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really? Well, actually, I didn't scroll that far back, so
Yeah.
perhaps there was quite a bit of feedback.
It was pretty split.
So I learned a little interesting, and this is maybe something everyone's known already. But for $45, you don't even need to think about having real ID to travel. Did you know this?
Mm-mm.
Now, the real ID, so I was did some driving, some flying. One of my brothers took a job down in San Antonio, Texas, some time ago, and his wife was still living in Missouri and over on the other side of the state. And so she and their two kids and their giant 150-pound Newfoundland dog or Newfoundland, whatever those dogs are called, were going to be headed down there, moving. He's been down there for a couple of months now or plus. And so that move was taking place over the weekend, and my dad was going to drive the U-Haul truck, which turned out to be a U-Haul truck, and then a trailer back behind it as well, and it asked if I'd like to go along. So, yeah, I'll go along and, help out in any way that I can. So Friday, after the show, drove to Cape Girardeau, and then we got up in the morning and drove to Texarkana, and then drove to San Antonio from there the next day. We kind of broke it. She's got two very small children, and like I said, that dog. So instead of doing the full 14, 15-hour drive, broke it up, and then just spent a day, that being Monday, just walking around in the rain. There were flood warnings the entire time that we were there.
Dang.
I know, and we were right. I mean, literally across from the Alamo at the Emily Morgan Hotel, which used to be, because first we were going to stay with my brother, but then we're like, his wife and they haven't, been able to, quote, live together for a couple of months now, and plus no bed set up, nothing set up. So we're like, we're going to stay at a hotel. So we went to the Emily Morgan, which was an old hospital, beautiful hotel, and it's kicking off Fiesta Week, which is this massive celebration. But it was just downpour the whole time, and so much of the festivities were canceled. We're at this restaurant. It was funny at one point, and I'm there with my dad. He's sitting across from me, and then my brother and my sister-in-law and the two kids. And I see my dad kind of point over my left shoulder, and I turn around, and there on a massive big screen TV is Congressman Eric Burleson. Even in San Antonio, that guy's popping, and he was being interviewed about these missing scientist, and it was a local affiliate, but it was their local news, and so I'm not sure if they were grabbing it from the national affiliate or how it came to be, but I thought it was pretty funny that there I am in San Antonio and here in the middle of a Mexican restaurant on the big screen TVs, filling the screens, Congressman Burleson's face. And so then, but we're getting ready to leave Cape Girardeau. This would be Saturday morning. And I don't know why this did not strike me, because the plan was then we're going to fly from San Antonio back to St. Louis, drive to Cape, get my truck, and then drive back here last night. And, so I can be here for the show today. And I think to myself, I don't have real ID, and I always just use my passport. And I didn't bring my passport. I'm like, what am I going to do? And so I call Rapid Ship Republic, and I say, hey, I've got to have my passport in San Antonio no later than Monday evening. How can that happen? And so they said, if it's in the next 5 to 10 minutes, that's when the last FedEx of the day goes out, then yes, we can have it there. So I call the girl child. And I was like, I need you to do something real fast. Get in the safe, get my passport, get over to Rapid Ship Republic, and like, you got to do this in the next 5 minutes so that pass, so I can fly back. Because if you don't have real ID, if you have like a military ID or a passport, and that's just what I've always used. I've always used my passport, but it's been top of mind because it's on The Great Escape, and so it's drilled into your mind.
Right.
I just wasn't thinking about needing the passport in order to fly from San Antonio to St. Louis. And so she scrambles, she gets over there, and I just in the nick of time, she gets that thing sent off, and I'm like, awesome. And it's going to be at my brother's house in San Antonio by 8 p.m. Monday. Our flight was 7:30 a.m. on Tuesday. And I'm then a few hours later talking to my wife, and I tell her, I said, hey, got saved. The girl child, I had to have her get the passport, and I tell this whole story, and she says, well, I got news for you. I have your passport. I was like, what are you talking about? You have my passport. She said, yeah, it's in my bag, which I didn't bother to ask, why do you have my passport? But I think it's the bag that she takes as a carry-on when we go on the Great Escape, that she also carries her work stuff in, and so that's why the passport was in there. And I'm like, you can't have the passport, because I know she knows what a passport looks like. She's not an idiot. I'm sure she opened it up. The guy at Rapid Ship, he looked at it, and she goes, I don't know what to tell you. And so they determined that the girl child and my wife, like, it's probably an expired passport. I said, I don't think I have an expired one. I know that I had one expire, but I don't ever remember when I go into the safe to get my passport that I'm like, oh, wait, not this one. This is the expired one. And so I'm like, what am I going to do? And then I get online, and I'm like, hey, what do you do if you don't have a real ID? You got to fly, and you don't have anything else. Now, I have my regular driver's license. So they're like, oh, we go to TSA site and prepay $45 in order to do, I forget what it's called. There's some name for it. This way that they can do a separate background check on you. I'm like, okay. So I go on there, click on it. It's like first name, last name. Okay. Email address. Okay. What day are you flying? Okay. And then how do you want to pay? No home address. No birth date. No social security number. Nothing. First and last name. Not even middle name. I put it anyway, but they had a space for it, but it wasn't listed as a required field. And then paid, and then it sent me an email, and it said, all right, just when you go through security, just essentially, these are my words, show them this email. So I get up there. Now, my dad's got the global thing because he travels a lot. The real fast where it expedites you. It does an eye scan or something. I don't know exactly how it works. And then, boom, you go through. So he goes that way. And then I get in line. I'm like, hey, here's the deal. And she goes, oh, go over there. So I go over there, standing behind some 5-foot Hispanic cowboy who is like, oh, yeah, I'm in the same boat you are. And then a TSA guy comes over, and I'm thinking this is going to be some elaborate deal. And so I show him the email, and he's like, okay. And he looks at my license, and then he takes this wand with this little pad and wipes it over my hands, puts it in the machine. He's like, okay, that's it.
Interesting.
I was done with that whole process in the same amount of time that my dad, who has that global pass that's supposed to Now, I did get held up because I had I had razor blades in my
Way to go.
I know. And those razor blades have been in there every single Great Escape. I just don't even think about them. They're for a straight razor. And the guy pulls it, because they pulled it aside, and he said, we have to throw these away. I said, yeah, that's fine. I understand. Although they were German blades, they're very good blades, but still, it was my own foolishness. But I thought to myself, there was no check. It was my first and last name, and then I paid $45, gave them my email to show that I paid the $45, and there was nothing about it that was secure at all. Zero. It was essentially, I guess, just a fee that you pay in order to try to prompt you, hey, you want to not pay this fee next time, get the real ID. And it was good for 10 days. So I've got 9 more days that I can fly on that $45. But I had no clue. I was all worried and thinking, I'm going to have to rent a car and drive back. It was so easy. So if you don't have a real ID and you don't have a passport, and at least based off my experience, you could just pay $45 and then you're good to go.
There you go.
Yeah.
Now, I think I must have missed a part of the story. So what happened with your passport?
My wife did have it.
Okay.
And my brother sent me a pic of what he received in the mail, and it was an expired passport.
Okay.
It was exactly what I mean, I knew that had to be the case. It's what my wife insisted. And the girl child, she was insisting because she goes, she says, I know that what I sent was a passport. She said, because when I opened it, it was your face looking back at me. And those were her exact words. But I just in my head did not remember ever reaching in that safe and seeing I don't know. So I knew that they had to be right about it. It just boggled my mind that I just could not make all that fit. But anyway, yeah, so all of that lesson learned is that it is just as easy as can be if you got $45 to fly without a real ID,
There you
which
go.
I still don't have, and I don't got any plans to get it until my current driver's license expires. Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you, the Pyramid Roofing Company. We had some pretty severe storms on Friday. Lots of hail damage, especially up in the northern part of the listening area. If you experienced any type of storm damage to your roof whatsoever, please make sure that you go with a trusted roofing professional and not some random door knocker. And the door knockers, they are out and about. And 99% of the time, they do not have your best interest in mind. Just make sure that you have somebody that's been in the business a while and they've been around a time or two, and they really do have your best interest in mind. And my go-to recommendation is always Josh and his team over at the Pyramid Roofing Company. Now, the Pyramid team, they offer emergency tarping services if you need them, free roof inspections, and the best part is they're going to be upfront and honest about the work that needs to be done. So if you experienced storm damage, make sure that you reach out to Josh, schedule that free roof inspection. You can find all of the contact information for the Pyramid Roofing Company under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
100 years, Route 66, Thursday, April 30th. Is that next Thursday? Is that a week from
That
tomorrow?
is,
Okay.
yes.
Great Southern Bank Arena, the National Route 66 Centennial Kickoff Concert taking place, starring Little Big Town, Gary LaVox, Rascals Flats, Chris Jansen, Gretchen Wilson, and more, hosted by none other than John Goodman. And we have your chance to win tickets all week, including today. So here's all you got to do is text today's keyword, which is highway, all one word, HIGHWAY, WAY rather. WAY. See what happens when I take a couple days off?
You got it.
Yeah. Text it to the Pyramid Roofing Company. Talk text line 447-KSGF, and that will get you registered. And I take it you can every day is a different registration, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah. So we'll have a different word every day, and that gives you, of course, Monday and Tuesday. Today that will be three opportunities, and then Thursday and Friday as well. Someone asked, "What's harder?" This was on the Pyramid Roofing Company text line. What is harder, moving or job? I don't know if that means this job. I don't know. I loathe moving. I loathe it. I'm trying to think what things I dislike more than moving. The part of the moving I dislike the most is the packing of things and loading of things, and I really didn't do any of that stuff. I got there as that part was being completed. My brother had hired some people.
How convenient.
I know, right? And so my job, essentially, the drive down over the 2 days was to pour my dad's Diet Pepsis and get him snacks out of the snack bag. That was pretty much it. The Jelly Bellies, the Whoppers, this is the survival kit that my dad, not an 8-year-old, but my dad put together. It was Jelly Bellies, Skittles, Whoppers, Good and Plenty's, and there was something else in there as well, and some cheese crackers and Diet Pepsis. That is, yes,
Good for him.
not an 8-year-old, but
He's a man that knows what he likes.
yes. Oh, and this is that, yes, 100%. And so I made sure that when he needed ice in his little thermos cup and a Diet Pepsi poured, that's pretty much what I did, and kept him company the whole time. So offered to drive, but he likes to drive, and so I didn't even have to drive. I just entertained that trip. And then when we got to my brother's, he had some of his employees helped unload, and they did very quickly. He had like 6 or 7 or 8 folks, and so it didn't take long at all. But yeah, I loathe it. I would rather do just about anything than move, and so I don't even consider what I did helping move. I just went along in order to keep my dad company, and I think I did an okay job. Coming up, all right, so just some of the breakdown on the dark money that went in order to essentially buy a full one-party rule in the state of Virginia. And what this is part of what has become the Democrat Party and winning elections. It has nothing to do with issues any longer. It isn't. I mean, when they have to campaign and they have to pretend that they are campaigning on issues, but ultimately it is about getting as many illegals in the country. It is about setting up a voting system that makes it easy for voter fraud. It's about trying to kick your opponents off the ballot. It is about gerrymandering so that the political opposition has zero hope of ever having any control, or the voters have, the better way to look at it, to prevent your voters from ever having the option of having an alternative option run the state. That's what Virginia has done, at least in terms of the congressional seats, just disenfranchising about half of the voters that tend to vote Republican. And when you can't win on the issues, when you can't win on your results, you just rig the system. And Democrats, they don't just do it when it comes to Democrat versus Republican. They do it to their own as well. And we saw it during the last presidential primary season, in which they rigged it by moving different primaries around on the calendar in order to make sure that Joe Biden didn't have any serious challengers. And then when they decided they didn't want him anymore, they just overturned that election and coronated old Kamala Harris, who, by the way, according to the latest polls, is leading Gavin Newsom amongst Democrat voters for the next presidential election.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the First Alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. Today we'll see partly sunny skies with a high near 75. Tonight mostly clear with a low around 58. For your Thursday, mostly sunny with a high near 79. And taking a look at Friday, an 80% chance of showers with a high near 76.
A text message on the Pyramid Roofing Company text line regarding my passport. Hey, Adam at Rapid Ship here. Heard your passport story. Question. Did your expired passport arrive even though it was unneeded? Yes, it did. It arrived even earlier than what the deadline of 8 p.m. Monday evening, and so I don't know exactly what time, but we were having dinner, and I told my brother, I said, yeah, it'll be by 8 p.m. He goes, oh my gosh, it came. He goes, I just forgot it. I'm so sorry. I was like, well, it's not really, I don't need it at this point, but yes, and without question, I mean, the moment I knew, I may have really screwed myself here. I could be in a bad place. Very first call was Rapid Ship Republic, without question, because I knew that if it could be done, that they would absolutely do it, and they proved themselves awesome once again. So a huge thank you to those folks over there. Soros-linked dark money puts a lopsided Democrat power grab across the finish line. Virginia voters narrowly approved a gerrymandered House map Tuesday, one expected to add 4 Democratic seats in the midterms. The 2026 Virginia redistricting amendment passed with 51% of voters backing the yes campaign and 49% casting their ballot for no, with 49% of votes counted, the Associated Press reported. As a result, the light blue state, which former Vice President Kamala Harris won less than 52% of the vote, will likely see 91% of its House seats drawn in order to favor Democrats. Prior to the state's new lopsided gerrymandering, Democrats held 6 of Virginia's 11 seats, or 55%, a percentage just slightly higher than the share of the votes Harris won there. The new map, which some analysts say will disenfranchise the state's rural area, leaves only 1 Republican-held seat. The 9th district, it redraws 4 seats held by Republicans that, those voters will just no longer have the representation of their choice. Now, the dark money component here is important because Democrats run around campaigning on eliminating dark money. They campaign demonizing dark money, and they straight up lie, convincing their supporters that dark money is a tool that is utilized by Republicans overwhelmingly. And while Republicans will oftentimes utilize dark money, by far the Democrats hand over fist win the dark money grab, and they have over and over and over again. This is yet another just straight up lie. Now, dark money is called dark money because we don't know the origins of the dollars. These are dollars that are donated to organizations that do not have to disclose their donor list. So you can have people donate all of this money and no one knows who is donating to the organization. And it's called dark money because, the donors are in the dark. You don't know who these people are. And it is one of these issues that Democrats pretend as if they're great warriors against. And you have a lot of people who don't believe in dark money. They think dark money is nefarious. They think dark money should be banned. And so they champion the Democrat cause because Democrats convince them that they are somehow against dark money when no one benefits. No one benefits like Democrats do when it comes to dark money. And this is yet another one of those instances, not to mention the dark money groups that backed the successful Yes campaign outspent the opposition to the referendum. The chief group in support of the 10-to-1 Democrat gerrymander known as Virginians for Fair Elections, which, as usual, with the left, they name, be it legislation or organizations, the opposite of what it is that they actually are gunning for, raised $64 million, with a quarter of the total going to television ads. The Washington Post reported on April 16th. The outlet also likened uncovering the source of the group's money to taking apart a many-layered Russian nesting doll. Virginians for Fair Elections notably took $5 million from the Fund for Policy Reform, Inc., a group affiliated with and funded by George Soros. Well, of course. No one has bought and paid for the Democrat Party like George Soros. For a political party that loves to run around talking about no kings, talking about billionaires, you get these left-wing protesters that talk about how they're sick and tired of billionaires running everything, yet every one of their causes is funded by billionaire George Soros. I don't think there's a cause that Democrats protest over or campaign over that isn't funded by George Soros. These are all puppets, and he is their puppet master. And, of course, what is somewhat amusing is these useful idiots, most of them have no clue that they're bought and paid for. No clue. They believe that they just magically all came together. And you think about it, it's like the movie Clue, where you have all of these random people, seemingly random people. They're not random. They think that they're random. They get invited to this mansion. They don't know why they're there. But they're sitting around, and they're trying to kind of put it all together, like who, and trying to figure out who coordinated this thing. And they're questioning each other. Well, what's your background? They're sitting around the dinner table. The Clue, by the way, great. I'm sure most of you have seen it. Fantastic film. They're all invited to this mansion. They don't know why they're invited to the mansion, but they show up there, and they're sitting around the table trying to kind of, none of them really know. Does anybody else here know? So they're feeling each other out, and they slowly become just a little more transparent about the fact that none of them know why it is that they're all there. And so they're trying to piece it together. Well, what do you do for a living? Well, who do you know this person and that? They're trying to figure out why are we here? What person brought us here and for what purpose? Democrat activists never take that step. They just all show up, and it never crosses their mind that it wasn't a random thing in which build it and they will come, where they just think that all of these people that line the streets or march down the road just magically showed up with no one coordinating it whatsoever, other than maybe just some local volunteers. And in a demonstration of how ignorant, willfully so, and I think a lot of it is laziness, the left is, it's not like this is difficult to figure out. I mean, it's out there. Even Democrats don't deny George Soros funds this. So, I mean, you can't really deny it because of paper trails, because of receipts. It would be interesting to go along and just interview these protesters and see how many of them even know who George Soros is. I suspect most of them don't even understand whom it is that is controlling the strings of which they are tied or to which they are tied. Now, the wording of this referendum, back to the original point here, of the gerrymandering in Virginia, which, by the way, the reason this went to a vote is because, much like in California, there was a constitutional amendment or a law that says, hey, districts have to be drawn up in the name of fairness and saving democracy by this nonpartisan group over here. And like California, the Democrats in Virginia, have just said, well, except for this time. Laws are meaningless to these people. This is another lesson to be taken away from this. When they run around talking about needing fair elections, so let's put this group in place. Oh, let's say that you have to do it this way until it gets in their way, and then they just ignore it. They say, you know what? Let's vote to ignore it temporarily until we get our way. Laws are meaningless to these people if they get in their way. The actual 40-word referendum question presented to the voters as the sole entry on the Tuesday ballot read as follows. Now let's see if you think that this is objective. Quote, should the Constitution of Virginia be amended to allow the General Assembly to temporarily adopt new congressional districts to restore fairness in the upcoming election, while ensuring Virginia's standard redistricting process resumes for all future redistricting after the 2030 census? So the vote is, well, do you believe in fairness? Do you want our elections to be fair? If so, vote yes. If you want unfair elections, vote no. That is how it was worded on the ballot. Fairness. Which is why most believe that this will be overturned by the courts. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. I want a great homeloan.com, all of your home loan needs with the Carrickers and the team, Alex Carricker, Anthony Carricker. When you visit I want a great homeloan.com, in the upper left-hand corner, you will see Anthony's name and his cell phone number. You will see Alex's name and his cell phone number. You have their direct information, the direct contact info, and you can call them 7 days a week, even on the weekends. Now, of course, that doesn't mean they're always going to be able to answer it. They could be on the other line. They could be in church or at some church function. But that gives you that access. So you can leave a voicemail if it's a Saturday morning and something occurred that has, made you panic and you think, oh my gosh, this is going to cause a disruption in the process and we're going to have to wait until Monday and oh my, it's 3-day weekend, so Tuesday. No, it's all right. Just take a breath. And remember, you have them in your cell phone. So for all of your home loan needs, your refinancing needs, your reverse mortgage needs, I want a great homeloan.com. City seeks to build trust as the event brings departments to neighborhoods. This is a story in the News Leader noting that Springfield City Department heads are heading to neighborhoods to meet residents where they are and to hear their concerns. Through a new event format, city leaders hope to become more accessible, listen, and ensure citizen issues are addressed. Friday, April 17th, was the first of a series of events dubbed Mayor's Community Conversations that invites groups of neighborhoods to meet with Mayor Jeff Schrag and city department heads in an informal way to share their thoughts and concerns. City Clerk Anita Cotter, who helped spearhead the planning, said the goal is to build trust with the community and ensure citizens know the city wants to listen and make changes for the better. Quote, "This is something our citizens really want. They want to feel that connection. They want to feel listened to. It's all about that conversation." And the story goes into talking about on Friday night, April 17th, and what the focus of the meeting was on and so forth. Now, this is clearly in response to not just once, but twice voting down the city's request for this hotel tax for the purposes of the convention center. And they appear to have recognized that the people in the community feel that there is not a good relationship between the people who run the city and the citizens themselves. And that the people in the city feel disconnected and as if their concerns are not the same concerns that the people who run the city have. And so this clearly is an attempt to remedy that. Now, this is going to be interesting to watch and to see how this plays out. Because sometimes you have people that get it, and then sometimes you have people who think they get it. And it may be nitpicking, but when you have the city saying this is something that our citizens really want, they want to feel the connection, they want to feel listened to, it's all part of that conversation. Well, no, it's not about feeling as if they're listened. It's about knowing that they are. It's about the results. And that may be, it's easy to say, okay, we recognize that people don't feel as if we care about them. And so we're going to have these listening sessions and listen to them and tell them we understand how they feel and tell them we'll work on that. It's another thing, and a much, much, much more difficult thing, to shift the mindset from we're in charge here, we run the city, and when we need the taxpayers' input, we'll let them know, to shift that around to we don't work for the city, we work for the taxpayers. That is a massive cultural shift. And there's a potential danger in embarking on this type of endeavor if it doesn't result in people over time feeling as if it really truly makes a difference. Because then they will feel as if they're being played to. After a period of time, if this continues and people are showing up but nothing changes, the complaints don't ultimately get addressed, or they're told, well, we checked it out, but we're told by this department over here we can't do it, or whomever it is that they're speaking to explains to them why it can't be done, then the citizens will think, well, this is an insult. You're just pretending as if we have some say in things. And so in order for this to be part of some sort of meaningful change in the relationship between the people who run the city versus the citizens, it has to be more than just listening and then explaining why it is that we can't do these things you want. It has to result in meaningful change. Now, the challenge here, of course, is that as a city, not every complaint that comes the city's way is a reasonable complaint, and not every complaint that will come the city's way is a complaint that can be fixed. And so, that's a reality, of course, as is always the case when you have some people that are unhappy, because sometimes, people can be unreasonable, and sometimes people are reasonable, but it just doesn't work out their way. If though this is going to have an actual positive, meaningful result, and that result being the people of Springfield overall feeling as if, hey, the city really does care about us. They really do listen to us. They respond in a manner that demonstrates they recognize that we are the boss as the citizens, and that this is our city government. That is something that is going to take a tremendous amount of patience, because that takes a very, 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 very long time to establish that sort of relationship. I mean, we're talking a generation or two. This city has spent a very long time developing the reputation that they have of, particularly with the elected officials, of working for the government, not for the people. And in order for that sort of thing to turn around, it's going to take a great, massive cultural mind shift in the city of Springfield government, and we'll wait and see if this is the sort of thing that is a genuine attempt to change that mindset, or if this is, well, people want to be heard, so let's just have these meetings once in a while, let them yammer on, and then they'll feel better. They just need to vent a little. Time will tell which approach is going to be taken. Springfield Talk 1041, Hour 2. Welcome to the show, everyone. My name is Nick Reed. Do not miss the 25th anniversary tribute to 9/11, Friday, September 11th, Black Oak Amphitheater, featuring Big and Rich, Craig Morgan, Andy Ross, Jacob Smalley. Your chance to win tickets to that by simply going to KSGF.com. You can also win Lunch Bunch, Godfather's Pizza, while you're over there as well. So a couple of opportunities for you to win. And if you want to do a text to win, we've got the 100 years of Route 66 celebration coming up on Thursday, the 30th. That would be next Thursday. Great Southern Bank Arena, National Route 66 Centennial Kickoff Concert. Little Big Town, Gary LaVox of Rascal Flatts, Chris Jansen, Gretchen Wilson, and more, hosted by John Goodman. Your chance to win tickets all week long. All you got to do today to get entered is text the keyword highway to the Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line 447-KSGF, and that will get you registered to win yourself a pair of tickets. So good luck on that one, everyone. Someone asked if the latest gerrymandering in Virginia will result in Indiana doing the same, this sort of back and forth, or whether Republicans there will handicap themselves by not doing it because it's unfair, or how we'll look, or, well, it'll look like we're just, getting down in the mud with them. I don't know the answer to that. Don't know. There is a very good chance, according to many legal scholars, because of the wording on the ballot in Virginia, that it will be overturned, because the balloting instructed people that if you want fair elections, then you need to vote for this. I mean, it used the word fair. Do you support making the elections more fair? Which is really pretty humorous, because it notes that what they voted for temporarily allowed the legislature to circumvent the law by redrawing the districts to be more fair. Well, if the way the law is currently set up does not allow for the districts to be drawn fairly, then why would this only be a temporary move? Why would you not just make it permanent? The entire vote was based off the idea that the way things have been set up are completely unfair. Having what is an equal representation is wrong. We need to save democracy by instead taking away our voters' Republican seats, replacing them with Democrat seats 10-1 in order to save democracy. And in order to do that, we have to temporarily suspend the way that the law dictates that we draw up these districts. Well, if the way that the law dictates the districts be drawn up has led to this horrifically anti-democratic map, as they've contended, why would you not completely change and eliminate that law? Why would you only temporarily lift it in order to, quote, fix it? Because as the language dictated, that after the next census in 2030, the redistricting would go back to the way that it was before. But according to you, the way it was before was so bad that the law had to be temporarily ignored. It's a bit of a contradiction. Listen, we know, you and I understand the game. And I don't know that I can stress the point enough. This is how Democrats have decided to win elections in the future. There has been this evolution in which Democrats have given up arguing that your life is better when they're in charge, so vote for us. And the reason they've given up on that is because the results are pretty clear. particularly when you look at Democrat-run states versus Republican-run states. I mean, they're very consistently clear. And, of course, the most damaging indicator of this to Democrats is the fact that when people move, they move away from Democrat states and then they move to Republican-run states. You can't get around that. That's just a fact. People prefer, when it really comes down to it, they prefer to live in a state that has been run by Republicans over run by Democrats. That makes it very difficult for Democrats to argue, hey, look at what you want to know why you should vote for me? Here's my resume. Look at all these wonderful things I've done. Unless they just straight up lie about the results. But with the internet no longer under the censorship of Democrat rule, it becomes increasingly difficult to prevent people from knowing the truth. And so what do? You start rigging the game. And Democrats have been doing this for some time, stuffing the ballot box, altering the way that we vote instead of having an election day, an election week, an election month. Of course, flooding our country with people who are not American. And then, one of the things, we don't see it so much here, but the successful attempt in many Democrat-run cities to allow people who are not legal citizens to vote in, quote, local elections. Well, that's the gateway to allowing them to vote in anything, because as you know, whenever there is a presidential election or an election for Congress or the U.S. Senate, that's not on a separate ballot from local elections. On Election Day, you have one ballot, and anything and everything that is to be voted on is on that ballot, whether it is dog catcher all the way up to President of the United States of America. So when you allow people who are not legal citizens, as some cities run by Democrats do, in order to vote in local elections, you can see how that makes it pretty darn easy for them to also vote in elections that are federal elections. And even if you come up with a system in which you say, well, we'll go ahead and we'll have separate ballots for them. We really think the Democrat-run cities in which you have Democrat-run counties and Democrats that are, that fully populate the election boards are going to be real sticklers about that rule, because all one has to do is hand those citizens the full ballot, because once they vote and put it in the box, you can't undo that vote. Mail-in balloting. Kicking opponents off the ballot, trying to imprison your political opposition, redistricting so that you have complete and total one-party rule system with citizens that aren't part of your political party having absolutely no chance to ever have a voice in a representative government, or what's supposed to be a representative government. So this is the way that Democrats have slowly but surely evolved into winning elections. It is not by demonstration of their ability to govern in a manner that leads to a higher quality of life. It is rigging the system. Because what else do they have? Latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First, meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see partly sunny skies with a high near 75. Tonight, mostly clear with a low around 58. For your Thursday, mostly sunny with a high near 79. And taking a look at Friday, an 80% chance of showers with a high near 76.
Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line. Although I am concerned by the gerrymandering in Virginia, the one popular vote pact is far more concerning than the gerrymandering. This one pact will void the Electoral College beyond repair. This is yet another way that Democrats are attempting to, quote, win elections through rigging and changing the system. The One Popular Vote Act is the result of Democrats frustrated that they have lost a number of presidential elections by way of the constitutional requirement of how it is that we elect a president of the United States. And like everything, when they don't win, change the rules. One of the greatest frustrations, just any time that they lose because of stupid Americans that don't know better, is when the popular vote goes their way, as it has in a number of elections in the past, but the electoral vote does not. They try to describe this as a flaw in the system, while in fact this is the entire reason for the system. The rationale between having the system, the electoral system that we have in place, is to prevent exactly what it is that they want to occur, and that is to have the densely populated portions of the country deciding the presidential elections, rendering 98% of the country, geographically speaking, irrelevant when it comes to elections. You've seen the map. County by county when it comes to presidential elections, and it is 98 to 99% red with blue clusters in the highly populated areas. These are areas in which Democrats have vast control because they have run things so poorly. They have left a quality of life that renders people looking to the government for handouts. And so, much like a drug addict to a drug dealer, many of those voters become completely 100% reliant on the government for handouts. Democrats control them. They want those people to choose the president of the United States, not the rest of us. And so what has happened in a number of Democrat states is this so-called compact, the most recent being Virginia, in which if enough Democrat states, and we're not far away from this coming into play, to reach the 270 electoral votes, sign on to the compact, what they then say they will do is when the presidential election occurs, they will have their electoral votes cast towards whomever wins the popular vote, as opposed to however it is that their own voters vote. Now, sometimes it may be one and the same, sometimes. So, for example, if Missouri were part of it, something that State Senator Lincoln Huff, Republican, has promoted, then when, for example, you had Joe Biden running against Donald Trump and Joe Biden, quote, wins, the fact that all of people in Missouri overwhelmingly voted for Donald Trump, our votes would be thrown out, and instead the votes would be cast for Joe Biden. All in the name of democracy, of course. This arguably is something that would not pass constitutional muster. Although, you never know. Increasingly, though, some note that given trends that have been created by Donald Trump, it could backfire on Democrats. Democrats have managed to make people in the inner cities so dependent on them, they got to the point that they really genuinely felt no Republican would ever win the popular vote again. And that was part of the push to do this one vote compact in order to establish a one-party rule system in which Democrats would win the White House every single time because no Republican was ever going to win the popular vote as long as they had such a stranglehold on the Democrats on these heavily Democrat-populated areas like Chicago, Baltimore, Los Angeles, and so forth. Donald Trump, however, managed to prove that with the right message and the right candidate, Republicans can win the popular vote. So some have noted that you could have a scenario in which this, if they did get enough states signed on and they were able to implement this and it did stand, the court said, yes, this is perfectly legit. As a state, you decide where it is you want your electoral votes to go. And if you want to throw out your own voters' votes, that's fine. You can have at it. You could have a scenario in which the Democrat won the Electoral College vote, but the Republican won the popular vote, and those Democrat states would have had this compact in place and would have to throw out their Democrat voter votes and throw the electoral votes towards a Republican. Now, I happen to believe that would never happen, not because the numbers would not pan out, but because the Democrats would just refuse to abide by the compact. They would just say, no, we've decided we don't want to do this after all. And if you want to take us to court to try to fight it, go ahead. And then when they did, they would call those people election deniers, and any of the attorneys on behalf of the Republicans, they would work to disbar them, which is what they have done with a number of attorneys, including most recently out in California, one of an attorney that was arguing on behalf of Trump's election against Joe Biden and questioning, legally speaking, some of the outcomes and so forth. And so that is yet another way that they have gone about trying to rig elections, to take away the law license of any attorney that dares challenge their wins in court. You see, when you start noticing all these little things, you realize that for them it's just all about rigging it. Rig it, rig it, rig it, rig it, rig it. Why win an election? Why bother trying to win an election when you can just rig an election? That's the motto of the Democrat Party. All right, coming up, some new poll numbers regarding Democrats, and you watch. Democrats have genuinely made this determination to pick the biggest losers to be leaders within the party. After Kamala Harris lost the election to Donald Trump, there was a great deal of anger at her. I mean, on one hand, yeah, she deserves it, but on the other hand, you Democrats, I mean, your party screws you around every which way but Thursday. I mean, they don't even give you a say in who your nominee is going to be. She just gets anointed without a single vote cast in her favor. She's a train wreck. She is a total failure at everything she does. She is handed this nomination, and then, the people who gave it to her get mad when she doesn't, when she performs the way that she always performs. Poorly. This was not a surprise. You'd think that they would close that chapter, that the voters would close that chapter and think, okay, here's an opportunity for a fresh start. Let's not pick a loser this time. No, she's top of the polling. I mean, this is the best the Democrats feel that they have as voters. So some of those polling numbers coming up. Buttigieg is in there, another failure. Gavin Newsom, of course, failure. You've got Ocasio-Cortez in there, a true brainiac. I mean, if ever there was someone that demonstrates a higher level of intelligence, it is definitely Ocasio-Cortez. All of that in moments. I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. Today we'll see partly sunny skies with a high near 75. Tonight mostly clear with a low around 58. For your Thursday, mostly sunny with a high near 79. And taking a look at Friday, an 80% chance of showers with a high near 76.
I'm trying to find this one particular story as I shift things around here. I realize this is a good time to play some audio at a Pete Buttigieg event.
Was it a train wreck?
Yeah. It was a different sort of train wreck, but
A train wreck nonetheless.
well, we'll play the audio coming up here. I'm telling you, Democrat voters, so many of them, they are straight up lunatics. And the problem is, and we'll get to this with Pete Buttigieg coming up, is the Democrats encourage it. They groom this behavior. First, Kamala Harris remained atop a new 2028 Democrat primary poll as a clip of her appearing to adopt a different accent while telling black women to take an "I'm gonna get mine" also attitude towards politics went viral on social media. I don't have that audio, but if you, I've given up believing that some of these people care, that they are so demeaned. I'm not talking about Kamala Harris, but I'm just going to be straight up honest. When you have a segment of the population, in this particular, the demographic of black people, and they get treated as if they're morons and idiots and they're pandered to in this way, I just suppose as a human being kept believing that the black community at some point would say, we're not idiots, but apparently not. This moment is not going to occur. And while there has been a significant shift for Donald Trump amongst those within the black population, I just don't know what you have to do to that demographic in order for them to say, you know what, I'm kind of done being treated like an imbecile. I don't know what more insulting presentation Democrats can give than, you're talking about Gavin Newsom up there telling a black crowd, I'm just as dumb as you are. Of course, we could go through an entire listing of things the Democrats have said and done that give us an understanding as to what they really think about a black person in America. Back to the poll. An Echelon Insight poll conducted April 17th through 20th among 467 likely Democrat primary voters found Kamala Harris leading the prospective field with 22% support. Now, on one hand, to the credit of Democrats, you can say, well, 78% of Democrats aren't supporting her. And so that's a positive sign, right? While she's got a plurality, she's leading the pack. Still, 8 out of 10 Democrats are saying, I don't think so. However, at the same time, what this tells us is that there's no other Democrat that can get more than that. Gavin Newsom followed at 21%. I'm sure it's within margin of error. While Pete Buttigieg placed third at 12%, and Ocasio-Cortez received 10%. Governor Josh Shapiro, who will never get the Democrat nominee because he's Jewish, registered 5%, while Senator Cory Booker, who calls himself Spartacus, received 4%. Governor Pritzker of Illinois, which clearly, who wouldn't want the United States to look like the state of Illinois, and Senator Mark Kelly each drew 3%, while a bunch of other people that most haven't heard of draw less than that. Gretchen Whitmer only received 2%, which actually kind of surprises me that Gretchen Whitmer doesn't poll better for a number of different reasons. It goes down with a number of other Democrats with 1% and others at 0%. John Fetterman was put on that list. He received 0%, no surprise. Now, let's talk about Pete Buttigieg for a moment because he's in this. And he's another loser. A failed medium-sized town mayor who got traction, let's be honest about it, only because he's openly homosexual. That's it. He brings nothing else to the table. He brings nothing to the table in terms of success. And in the world of DEI, he's a white guy, so clearly he doesn't bring anything to the table in that context. But the homosexuality box gets checked off. If it were not for Pete Buttigieg being a homosexual, no one would even know the guy's name outside of the citizens who were under his failed leadership as mayor in Indiana. This is a guy who has so little accomplishment. When he got appointed to the director of transportation, he cited the fact that he was qualified because he rode a train a couple of times in college, which may have meant different things to different people, but nonetheless, that was it. He's doing a town hall meeting because he's obviously running for president. Now, I want you to listen to this question. This is a Democrat voter who asks him a question about this LGBT community, followed by his response.
Hi. Every day I wake up scared because a person I love is trans. And I'm waiting for the day that they start banging on doors and taking our trans and our gay friends and family to concentration camps. And they can't get, our trans friends and family can't get a passport to safely flee this country. And I know that there's nothing you can do about that. But if you could, what would it be?
Well, first of all, it's horrible that you have to even think about that kind of fear for somebody you care about. And it's horrible that so many Americans live in that kind of fear for themselves and for those they love. And it shouldn't be that way, and it doesn't have to be that way.
Well, it isn't that way. Pete Buttigieg, along with others like him in the Democrat Party, are sick. Any reasonable person who is just has even the slightest recognition of reality knows that that woman is out of her mind. And I think she genuinely believed it. She started to cry. She believes that at any given moment, gay and transgender people are going to be drugged from their homes and put into concentration camps. She believes that because people like Pete Buttigieg and other leaders in the Democrat Party foster that belief system. See, what Pete Buttigieg, if he were a human being with even the slightest bit of humanity in him, the first thing he would have done is, while acknowledging there are a lot of reasons to be concerned as an American citizen under Donald Trump, you do not need to worry about that. That is not going to happen. That while Donald Trump may be this awful, horrible person and terrible and so forth, the one thing you just don't need to worry about that. You don't need to have yourself so tied up in emotional knots that you break down crying because you believe that homosexuals and transgenders are going to be put in concentration camps. That is not something you need to worry about. That is the proper answer for two reasons. One, because it's true, but two, because this is a person that clearly is extremely frightened and emotionally upset by something that is absolutely not true. And any person with the slightest bit of humanity would do what they could in order to make sure she understood she didn't have to worry about that. What does he do instead? He feeds her fear. He validates it. Makes her believe that that's a possibility by saying, "You're right. Nobody should have to fear these things. No one should have to worry about it. It's horrible that that's a reality." Pete Buttigieg and anyone else who responds to a person like that about that particular issue in the way that he did is a sick human being. And I'll just classify him as a horrible human being. He is not a good person. Good people do not deliberately frighten the daylights out of other human beings in order to get them to support them or to cling to them. That is a toxic relationship. That is what bad people do. That is what bad human beings do. Virtually any toxic relationship that and maybe some of you have been in these toxic relationships, in which the bad guy in the relationship, and it's usually the guy who is abusive, if not physically, emotionally, and emotionally beats down that other person to believe that they can't live without him, that the world is out to get him, that you'll never make it out there on your own. You have to have me. That is a sick approach, and that is the approach of the Democrat Party. What sort of sick mind comes into contact with a person who clearly, truly, genuinely fears a thing that is nowhere realistically within the realm of possibility, and instead of comforting them, you play into it? These are the people who want to run the country. These are the people who, instead of instilling hope, and frankly, this is one of the reasons that Donald Trump resonated with so many Americans, is because he was about making America great again and highlighting and emphasizing and focusing on the good things, the positive things that bring people together. I mean, you could see, or people who attended his rallies, they felt good afterwards. They felt good. You may have gone to some of these rallies. It's one of the things that was pretty consistent, even at times in the campaign, in which people were very concerned about whether or not Donald Trump would win. They would come out of those rallies and talk about how they just feel so much better, so uplifted, so happy to be American, so grateful to be an American. You think the people who leave a Pete Buttigieg or a Kamala Harris or a Gavin Newsom event, when those sorts of questions are answered that way, walk away feeling better about life? The Democrat Party works deliberately to make human beings, to make Americans feel awful about themselves, to fear their neighbors, to fear any sort of political opposition or diversity of thought. And to culturally take what could and should otherwise be perfectly normal and emotionally healthy human beings and break them down to the point that they are so delusional that they come to an event to break down and cry, questioning Pete Buttigieg about what he would do if he were in charge, as opposed to Donald Trump, in which trans people and gay people at any given moment are going to be drugged from their homes and put into concentration camps. What a sick thing that the Democrat Party has become. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Pyramid Roofing Company text line. I pray every time I hear Kamala's name, she will be the nominee. So many hilarious memes, and as close to a guaranteed Republican president as we can get. The process is what I am more anxious to watch play out. The Democrats' last round of choosing their presidential nominee showed us that they no longer even try to hide rigging elections. And of course, hysterically, they still talk about in the name of democracy, when I don't think we have seen, at least certainly in this country, any political party that has less of an adherence to the fair democratic process than the Democrat Party. And this goes back pre-Biden Kamala Harris. Ask any Bernie Sanders supporter. They'll tell you. They will tell you from that primary in which Hillary Clinton would end up getting the nomination about how clear it was that they rigged the system in order for her to win. Even Donna Brazile had to admit when she was working for CNN that she gave Hillary Clinton the debate questions ahead of time. I mean, they have been rigging elections. I don't think that there has been an election in which they didn't tip the scales since Bill Clinton ran. Well, John Kerry, since he ran. He didn't win, but since he ran. Even with Obama. This is what, just really infuriated the Hillary Clinton people because it was supposed to be her turn, but they did everything they could in order to make sure that he was the one that would get that nomination. And it wasn't that difficult with the media and the historic nature of it, so it was somewhat organic that the rigging of that election, or the tipping of the scales, the interference, if you will, occurred. But what we've seen since then has just been an escalation of transparent rigging the system. And given that Democrats never turn the volume down, and they rarely keep it even keel, but when they realize they can get away with something, then they amp it up with great interest. I am anticipating this selection process of a nominee for the Democrat Party. And part of that's because there really isn't a clear winner, if you will. None of these nominees, or none of these Democrats, be it Gavin Newsom or Ocasio-Cortez or Kamala Harris, none of these individuals scream success. I mean, none of these, if you are a Democrat, can you look at and say, well, this is the person that's going to resonate with the normal American. This is the individual, that is going to bring back the blue-collar worker. This is the candidate that hasn't said a bunch of weird stuff about men and transgenders and, demonstrated how out of touch they are with the common man. They don't have that person. So when you're looking at a Democrat Party that has increasingly decided just to pretend to have elections and then ultimately they choose whom it is that is going to be the nominee, there really isn't an obvious pick. So you're going to have that drama. And then at the same time, if the individual candidate that the Democrat establishment decides is going to be the nominee, how it is that they're going to rig the system in order to make sure that happens. It's possible that they could be one and the same. The individual candidate that the establishment wants also happens to be the individual candidate that the people in the Democrat Party are convinced they should vote for, and so it just works out naturally. It just hasn't been that way for a while. And I frankly don't even know why at this point the Democrats waste time, resources, and donation dollars running in a primary or having the caucuses as that part of the process, given that ultimately it doesn't matter what the Democrat voters say. If they vote wrong, they throw out the election, as they did with Joe Biden. And all of the money that is going to get spent on a process that ultimately really doesn't matter, every one of those dollars are a dollar that could be used in order to beat J.D. Vance or Marco Rubio or, whichever of the Republicans ends up being the nominee in the general election. Oh, that's the part of all of this that I'm looking forward to the most is how it's going to play out, and then which state's going to go first. They moved New Hampshire and Iowa around last time in order to make sure that Joe Biden didn't look weakened by some challenger like RFK Jr. that might have double digits at the polls. And so are they going to move things around again? Are they going to move them around in order to help Gavin Newsom? Are they going to move the calendar around to help Kamala Harris? That's going to be the real intrigue. Hey everyone, welcome to the show. Hour number 3. My name is Nick Reed on Springfield's Talk 1041. We are also on YouTube. Head on over there and look up Springfield's Talk 1041. You should find us. Don't miss 25th anniversary tribute 9/11 on September 11th, Black Oak Amphitheater. Big and Rich, Craig Morgan, Andy Ross, Jacob Smalley. You can win tickets or have a chance to win tickets by going to KSGF.com. You can also register to win Lunch Bunch at Godfather's Pizza while you are there. And we got a text to win underway. Every day this week, a different keyword, and every keyword is an entry. When you successfully submit the keyword to the Pyramid Roofing Company text line, 100-year Route 66. Coming up next Thursday, Great Southern Bank Arena, the National Route 66 Centennial Kickoff Concert, starring Little Big Town, Gary LaVox of Rascal Flats, Chris Jansen, Gretchen Wilson, and more, hosted by none other than John Goodman. And your chance to win tickets. Today's keyword, you text in the word highway, HIGHWAY. That's highway. Text it into the Pyramid Roofing Company text line 447-KSGF, and that will be your entry. New keyword tomorrow for a new and additional entry. There was a recent election for the University of Michigan Board of Regents. That may not seem like that interesting of an election, but it gives us tremendous insight into the direction that the Democrat Party has fully accepted. On the board running for re-election was a Jewish guy. Running against the Jewish guy was an individual that has referred to top terrorists in Hezbollah as martyrs. Guess who won? Fox News reporting University of Michigan Board of Regents member was ousted after Michigan Democrats selected a candidate who has shared social media posts praising Hezbollah as the party's nominee. Amir Makhled, a trial lawyer, bested incumbent regent Jordan Acker, who is Jewish, for the Democrat Party's nomination at the state party's convention over the weekend, sparking criticism from a former leader of the state's Democratic Party. More than a week before Michigan's Democratic Convention, the Detroit News reported that Makhled had shared and later deleted a post on X praising Hezbollah leaders Hassan Nasrallah and Abdul Ali Khalil, who were both killed in Israeli airstrikes. In both posts he shared, Nasrallah and Khalil were dubbed martyrs. The Democrat nominee also shared a now-deleted post from Candace Owens in which she referred to Israelis as demons who lie, steal, cheat, murder, and blackmail. Brandon Dillon, the former head of the Michigan's Democrat Party, penned an opinion piece in the Detroit News criticizing Makhled's candidacy that was published just days before Makhled won the party's nomination. Dillon noted that Makhled is not a Democrat and that the social media behavior reflects a pattern of extremism and bigotry. Now, this is part of the story. I want to finish the story here, but we're going to come back to the claim from the former head of the Democrat Party in Michigan that this individual is, quote, not a Democrat. All right? So hold on to that. We're going to come back to that. The former Democrat leader in Michigan wrote in the Detroit News, "These are not isolated missteps or comments taken out of context. They reflect a broader pattern of poor judgment that should raise serious concerns." By the way, poor judgment in this case is another way of saying anti-Semitism. In his acceptance speech for the party's nomination, Makhled gave a nod to students involved in the anti-Semitic protests that formed on the University of Michigan's campus in the wake of the October 7th terrorist attacks, saying, quote, "To these students who spoke up, these students who organized, these students who refused to let anyone tell them that their education wasn't worth fighting for, you all reminded us what a public university is supposed to be." McLeod, who legally represented University of Michigan students involved in the anti-Semitic protest, had previously called for the university system to divest from Israel. The anti-Semitic protests which formed at the university led to reports of anti-Semitic attacks against Jewish students. The University of Michigan was one of 60 universities notified by the Department of Education that it was being investigated for violating Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of '64 for failing to properly address anti-Semitic harassment and discrimination. In December 2024, just months before the Education Department shared its notice with the University of Michigan, the car belonging to outgoing Regent Acker was vandalized. The words "Divest Free Palestine" and an inverted triangle, a reference to Hamas, were spray painted in red across his vehicle. At the time of the attack, Acker said it was the third time that year that as a Jewish man he had been victimized by anti-Semitic vandals, a.k.a. Democrat activists. Now, we see here what the Democrat Party has become. It is settled in some areas of the country, and it is yet to be, but apparently inevitable in other parts of the country, and that is the Democrat Party being fully controlled by anti-Semites. Many of which, at the same time, are Islamic extremists that praise terrorists. Now, I'm sorry. I fully understand there are a lot of Muslims in not just this country, but across the world that have nothing but peace in their hearts. But when you praise terrorist masterminds as martyrs, you do not fall into that category. And these are the Democrat activists. This is the heartbeat of the Democrat Party, because this is a Democrat convention in which the nominee was chosen. And they had a choice between the current individual on the Board of Regents, who is a Jewish man, or someone who has supported anti-Semitism, who praise terrorists who want to wipe Israel off the map. And it has become a no-brainer at this point when Democrats have that choice, whom it is that they're going to choose. By the way, when I referenced earlier the fact that Josh Shapiro, as a Jewish man, would never get the Democrat nomination, this is part of that evidence. What is interesting in here is the former head of the Democrat Party in Michigan writing an op-ed piece ahead of time, declaring that, hey, this guy, yes, he's running as a Democrat, but he's not really a Democrat. He does not represent Democrat values. What that is? That is a Democrat who doesn't recognize what the party is today, who doesn't recognize that he actually is no longer a Democrat by Democrat Party standards today, and the terrorists are. The sympathizers with terrorists are. The fundraisers for terrorists are. Those who call for the elimination of Jews. That is the Democrat Party today. And as much as some of these old school Democrats write op-ed pieces, get out there and declare that that's not the Democrat Party, that is the Democrat Party. And the proof of that is the fact that the Democrat Party at the convention voted for that guy. If that is not a demonstration of what the Democrat Party is today, I don't know what is. Latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First, meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see partly sunny skies with a high near 75. Tonight, mostly clear with a low around 58. For your Thursday, mostly sunny with a high near 79. And taking a look at Friday, an 80% chance of showers with a high near 76.
I hear this story about how the name change of Hammons Field may be something on the horizon. And, of course, Great Southern Bank Arena once upon a time was the Q. And it sort of sends a message. If you are someone that is thinking because you are responsible for a great deal of infrastructure in, at least in Springfield, once you're gone, your legacy may slowly disappear. I don't know why. Maybe this is commonplace. If you have a community in which an individual was very instrumental in having facilities built, once that person dies, they're like, we could get some cash. If we just take their name off of it. And I just don't know that Hammons envisioned, not honestly too terribly long after his death, the folks that have the ability to do so would just start stripping his name off stuff. I think there's a very good chance that a name that has long been synonymous to a degree, particularly when it comes to hospitality in Springfield, and that's John Q. Hammons, that we may be getting into an area in which they completely erase his memory, and people will move to and grow up in Springfield that never even hear the name Hammons. At least that appears to be the direction things are headed. Listen, I'm not pro, and it's not any argument that's a pro Hammons argument. I just find it, I don't know. It's maybe I'm wrong. This is just on the surface, but it seems a little distasteful and disrespectful. And there may be some who I may be totally wrong on that. I don't know. It's just like the guy dies, and then, we got to wait a little while, and we'll start taking his name off of stuff. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. couple of your text messages. Pyramid Roofing Company text line. I thought they removed his name because he didn't fully fulfill payments fully. I feel like I heard that. Another saying Hammond's name change is heartbreaking. Another saying, Nick, you are right. It makes me sad. They're taking John Q. Hammond's name off of things. Look, I fully acknowledge, I know a lot of times there's different contractual obligations and maybe fulfillment has been made. I'm wondering if Juanita K, are they going to at some point change that to something? And so I know a lot of times there's a lot more behind the scenes that occur when it comes to this stuff, but it's just noticeable when there is a name synonymous with a community and a name that is associated with what many people perceived as being responsible for some significant infrastructure in the community, and then when that person dies, just that stuff slowly going away, and then when it's replaced by what clearly are revenue streams, I think for a lot of people it just seems a little uncouth, or maybe I don't know, maybe it's unfair. I don't. And hey, change is change, and some people can write it off as, oh, you just don't like change. I don't think that it's that so much. It may be completely unfair, but it just seems a little disrespectful. And like I fully acknowledge that maybe that is an unfair assessment, but that's just on the surface. When you make changes like that with names that are part of the community and have long been part of the community, people notice. And it just seems like it's a good idea to me to explain, oh, here's why. Like, if there's legitimate reason. Like, hey, you know what, John Q. Hammonds, he said that he wanted at some point when he passed for his name to be removed. And I just think that it's beneficial to let people know that. Be like, hey, here's why we're making the change. This is why it's not disrespectful. This is what he would have wanted if, in fact, that is the case. Making news over the last couple of days is Democrat Senator Chris Murphy, in what many people perceived as him cheering on the terrorist regime in Iran. And this would be in line with the overall tone of coverage and critiques or commentary by both the media and the Democrat Party. If you did not know any better, if you were from some other planet and had no clue or concept about human interaction, about the autonomy of countries, about allies, about patriotism, you clearly would think that the Democrat Party was an ally of the Iranian regime, just by the way that they talk about all of this. And you would think that the media was run by the Iranian government, by way of how they cover this stuff. Everything is covered through the lens of Trump is wrong, Trump is bad, international criminal, unconstitutional war, illegal war, Trump is losing. It is straight up pro-terrorist propaganda. And I'm not really sure how one could argue otherwise, how one could argue that the way that all of this is being covered and the way that Democrats talk about it is anything other than exactly what the terrorists who run the Iranian regime would want it to be, right? I mean, arguably, the Iranians that are continuing to be the problematic component to all of this are continuing on because of a morale boost coming from the Democrats and the media. Because there's no one else in this entire world other than the terrorists who are claiming that they're winning this thing. There's no one else in the entire world who are covering it from a perspective that would be beneficial to the terrorist other than the Democrats and the media. I mean, no one. Even the Arab nations throughout the Middle East aren't promoting the sort of propaganda that the Democrats are. Now, the latest with Senator Chris Murphy, which he's tried to back out of, was based off of a fake news report that apparently at least it was either the Chinese or the Russians, maybe both, had a little bit of hand in putting out fake news in which they claimed that 26 Iranian shadow fleet vessels had slipped past U.S. lines. Now, this apparently is completely untrue, no truth to it whatsoever. It's more of the propaganda coming out of Iran and then being spread by our enemies. And, of course, Chris Murphy picked it up and ran with it, what some might call a useful idiot. And he shared the fake news report and then said it was awesome. As you can imagine, there was a great deal of backlash, not from the Iranian terrorists, they loved it, not from the Democrat Party, they're on board with it, and not with the media. Same reasons. But average Americans just thought maybe when we're at war with a terrorist country, you should not be rooting for the terrorists. Just bare minimum, as not only an American, but a United States Senator. He's tried to claim that he was being sarcastic. That he was like, oh no, I was just being sarcastic. I was like, oh, that's awesome. But let's say for a moment that's true. Does that make it much better? Mocking the United States of America? So his excuse is that he's mocking our military, mocking our commander-in-chief, mocking the United States of America while they're in a war with the number one terrorist nation in the world. That's his excuse. He wasn't rooting for the terrorists. He was simply mocking our efforts to take down the terrorists. Again, do we think that the terrorists mind what he was doing? No, of course not. This is helping motivate them. This is some of what I want to talk about here. It's just a brief recap of what has been a long history of Democrats giving support to the terrorist regime of Iran. And I'm not just talking about pallets of cash. I'm not simply talking about giving access to billions and billions of dollars that were locked up in these different bank accounts that were then allowed, the Iranian terrorists were given access to so that they could stay in power, make nuclear weapons, and carry out the terrorist attack of Israel or on Israel on October 7th. It's not just that. When you look back at a number of things that have happened that made news but didn't get a tremendous amount of focus, you see that the Democrat Party has become a party that when it comes down to the United States versus Iran, they represent the Iranian regime, not the American people, through their own behavior. And one of the most stark instances in which John Kerry got caught as former Secretary of State sabotaging when Trump was president the first time around, when Trump was trying to prevent Iran from getting to the place that it is now, John Kerry was behind the scenes telling them, don't worry, just hold tight, wait till we get back in charge. Attempting to sabotage our efforts when it came to dealing with Iran on behalf of the Iranians. This isn't anything new. It's just coming to the surface to a more stark degree because we're in this actual physical military war with Iran now. But the Democrats have long been allying themselves with the terrorists of Iran over the United States of America.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First, meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by JNS Automotive. Today we'll see partly sunny skies with a high near 75. Tonight, mostly clear with a low around 58. For your Thursday, mostly sunny with a high near 79. And taking a look at Friday, an 80% chance of showers with a high near 76. And Springfield Livestock Marketing Center, buckle up, kids, because they've got a busy rest of the week. Today, they'll host their weekly feeder sales starting at 9 a.m. On Thursday, they're doing something a little bit different. They'll host a real estate sale that will feature over 395 plus acres. That sale will start at 6 p.m. Friday, they'll host their monthly horse sale starting at 5. And finally, on Sunday, they will have the Show Me Red Angus sale starting at 2 p.m. So once again, busy week out there at Springfield Livestock. And I always mention the buying side of things, but hey, if you're out there looking to sell, they accept cattle 7 days a week, and they have field reps across the listening area that can help answer any questions or even help you haul. To check out other upcoming sales, visit their website, springfieldlivestock.com. And of course, you can find all of their contact information under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
Democrat Senator Chris Murphy has attempted to backtrack his comments that it was awesome that, well, there were reports that our blockade had failed. The Iranians had figured out how to get a shadow fleet around them. Turned out it was fake news and that it was just propaganda being put out by our enemy. Chris Murphy's excuse is that I guess he fell for it and decided to be a useful idiot for the Iranian regime while mocking the United States of America. That's his excuse. Not that, I was hacked and didn't do it, but I'm an idiot. And I was just sarcastically poking at what he thought were the failures of our country in taking on terrorism. What a swell guy. Who wouldn't want that as a U.S. Senator? And, of course, it's the fault of people who, quote, misunderstood him. You know, I went back because of my memory of Democrats siding with the Iranians. By the way, Chris Murphy, several years ago, pushed the Biden administration to take the Iranian Guard, their terrorist military, off the terror list, to undesignate them. When you have lobbied on behalf of terrorists in the past, it makes it a little difficult when you're cheering them on by way of social media, then deleting the post to claim that you were just joking, just being sarcastic. The Washington Times reported several years ago John Kerry held back-channel talks with Iran. President Trump in 2019 sought to open a back channel of communication with top Iranian officials and saw the UN General Assembly meeting in September as a potential opportunity to diffuse escalating tensions with Tehran, but the effort failed. 2 months earlier, however, a different back channel was thriving in New York. Iran's smooth English-speaking foreign minister Mohammad Javad Zarif met with Robert Malley, who is President Obama's Middle East advisor, in an apparent bid to undermine the Trump team and lay the groundwork for post-Trump relations. The attempt at counter-diplomacy offers a window into the deep relationship that the Iranians forged with influential U.S. liberals over the past decade. These relationships blossomed into what high-level national security and intelligence sources say allowed the Iranian regime to bypass President Trump and work directly with former Obama administration veterans that Tehran hoped would soon return to power in Washington, and many of them did in the Biden administration. You see what's going on here? Let's not forget that our intelligence agencies under the Biden administration acknowledged the Iranians were trying to rig our election so that Biden would win, and then Kamala Harris after him. Why do you think that is? Isn't it remarkable that the political party that the Iranian terrorist regime want to be in charge here in the United States of America is the same political party that keeps spreading Iranian propaganda? The Democrat Party is actively working on behalf of the Iranians when it comes to messaging this war. I don't know how much of this is just an ideological sympathy towards terrorism within the Democrat Party, if this is a money flow issue, if this is maybe not on behalf directly of dollars from the Iranians, but from the Chinese, who, of course, want the Iranians to be victorious in this for a number of reasons. But this love affair with the terrorist regime of Iran is not something new within the Democrat Party. And the fact that you had it during the first Trump administration, while Trump is trying to work back channels in order to ease tensions with the Iranians, you have former Obama officials, including John Kerry, that were actively working to sabotage those efforts. When does treason come into play here? Is that a thing that is just a word but doesn't actually mean anything any longer? One of the individuals, and this isn't a new story, this came up years ago when this was revealed, and it wasn't denied. One of those working with the Iranians in opposition to America during the first Trump administration was former Secretary of State John Kerry, who met with Zarif during the Trump years. So did Obama-era Energy Secretary Ernest Moniz. They, along with Malley, were top U.S. negotiators of the 2015 Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. As part of the deal, Tehran promised to limit its nuclear enrichment activities with a pinky swear in exchange for economic sanctions relief and access to tens of billions of dollars in frozen bank accounts. And of course, we saw what the results of that was. Enriched uranium enough to make about a dozen nuclear weapons. That's what our taxpayers bought, just like our tax dollars bought, just like our tax dollars bought a nuclear North Korea. Trump, because he recognizes stupidity, pulled us out of that. It wasn't even a pact, it was a plan of action. Back in 2018, because he understood reality, and that is that these people would just use that money in order to enrich uranium to make nuclear weapons, which is exactly what they were doing. So while Trump was attempting to undo the damage that the previous administration had done in terms of helping Iran become a nuclear country, you had former Obama administration officials working behind the scenes telling the Iranians, just ignore this, don't work with him, don't worry, we'll be back in charge soon, and then you'll be right back on track. Your allies will be in the White House once again. And turns out they were right. Mr. Kerry and Mr. Malley are now in the Biden administration. This Washington Times story came out during the Biden years. Mr. Kerry is a climate advisor. Mr. Malley poised to play a major role in U.S.-Iranian relations from his perch as special envoy for Iran policy at the State Department. And the story goes on to explain how it was that the Democrats were working behind the scenes in order to derail the efforts by Trump to make sure Iran did not become a nuclear power. And in terms of the relative success that they did have in enriching uranium, the Democrats were successful. You can see why they're so butthurt at Donald Trump's efforts here, because it's their allies that the Trump administration is removing from power militarily. It is all of that hard work that the Democrats help fund development of nuclear weapons by the Iranians that Donald Trump is destroying. Just the sheer fact that they are openly promoting Iranian propaganda, that they are offering aid and comfort by way of messaging, utilizing the media in order to tell the Iranian regime, don't worry, Trump's losing this thing. Trump can't win this thing. Don't worry. That by itself, you would think would be enough for every American, other than sleeper cells here in the United States, to push back against the efforts of the Democrat Party. When you have the media on your side that shares the sentiment and that also has an apparent sympathetic heart for the terrorist regime, it can do a tremendous amount of damage to national security, to the truth, and at this point is seemingly acting as a lifeline for the terrorists running Iran. This support for the Iranians is nothing new. It's been going back to the Obama administration, up to and including what I would argue is the traitorous behavior of former government officials working behind the scenes to sabotage the U.S.'s attempt to deal with Iran during the Trump years. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you. Review time for the fine folks over at Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air. Cindy wrote, Foreman Mechanical did an awesome job out at our home. Very reasonably priced. Would recommend them to everyone. We called them. They came out same day and got our air back up and running again. Thank you so very much, Russell. And that is why I like to tell you about their 24/7 emergency service line. You know, breakdowns, they never happen at the most convenient time. They're never convenient, but, you know, it's always on the weekend or maybe right after you get home from a long day at work or, you know, in the late afternoon. If you ever need to utilize that 24/7 emergency service line, they are very quick to respond, and honestly, they just make the process a little more stress-free and just simple. So if it is time to have the Foreman team out to your home, reach out to Russell today. You can find all of the contact information for Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
A text regarding Republicans saying, as a lifelong Republican, I'm so fed up with the leadership in the Republican Congress, spineless bunch of hypocrites. All right, well, this one is for you. Anna Paulina Luna says, disgusting John Rhino Thune no longer even considering the Save America Act. The Gateway pundit reporting, just when you thought the Senate Rhino establishment couldn't get any weaker after 14 full days out of session, Thune is reportedly no longer even considering the Save America Act. Anna Paulina Luna, Republican Florida, blew the lid off yet another disgraceful backstab by Senate Majority Leader John Thune. In a direct message to the American people on X, she said after months of dragging their feet, floating fake solutions, and pretending to fight for election integrity, Thune has officially thrown in the towel on President Trump's signature vote protection bill. Thune said there may be, quote, other pressing stuff more important than election integrity, according to Punchbowl. Punchbowl News reporting the Senate will come off of the Save America Act this week and may not return to it anytime soon, if at all. When they start voting on the ICE Border Patrol budget resolution, SAVE will no longer be the pending business. That means Thune would need to hold another procedural vote to restart floor debate. Thune does not commit to holding a vote to get back onto the Save America Act after the budget resolution and FISA reauthorization are done. Senate will come off of Save this week to pass the budget resolution, would require another vote. Quote, if we don't have the other pressing stuff in front of us that has to get done, then we'll see about getting that going. He said in a fiery follow-up post, Luna issued a stark warning to Thune, no voter ID, no FISA. The pressure intensified further after Senator Mike Lee publicly blasted the situation. Quote, when Americans want one thing, the Save America Act, and the swamp wants another, FISA 702 reauthorization without reforms, the Senate GOP should side with the people, not the swamp. Why is this so difficult? And this is the point that I made last week when this whole FISA reauthorization situation came back up. And that is, I mean, this was last week, I believe, the wee hours of the morning working, twisting arms, I'm sure making threats in order to get Republicans in line, in order to get some form of reauthorization for FISA. Now, the reason FISA is controversial, this is a post-9/11 deal that allows for secret courts and allows secret courts to give permission to spy on people who are not citizens of this country. Of course, the problem is if those individuals happen to be communicating with, talking with people that are Americans, then they too get spied on. And we also know that the court has been used for nefarious purposes. For example, spying on candidate Donald Trump and attempting to sabotage his campaign. And they went so far as to doctor evidence, to falsify evidence, lying to the FISA court in order to get permission to spy on his campaign. Now, despite that, Trump believes that it's still in the best interest of our national security in order to have these powers. And you have some Republicans that say that there have been some teeth put into it that would result in real punishment for those within our government who abuse the power. I don't think any American believes that would actually ever happen in terms of somebody being held accountable. But the point being is there was a scrambling to make sure this got done. And what this tells us is that with the current Republican leadership, when something is important to them, they sure as heck make sure that they get it done. When something is important to them, they will do whatever it takes, no matter how late into the evening, no matter how many arms they have to twist, no matter how many threats they have to make, in order to make sure that it happens. The FISA vote is an example of that. But when it comes to making sure that our votes are secure, making sure that we have just a little bit of integrity in our voter laws, that somehow they can't muster up the conviction to make that occur. And I don't think it says a lot about the Republican Party leadership when their true passion between the two doesn't lie in election integrity, but instead lies in making sure that our government can continue to spy on us when they want to. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. And of course, as always, your home for the absolute best realtor in the 417, even beyond. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. If you are looking to put your house on the market and you've got it in your head, we're going to do this. Maybe it's a year from now, but you think, well, we're going to take that time to do some much-needed upgrades. Don't do that. Do not do those upgrades until you first, even if you're not going to sell for a year, 2 years, or sometime down the road, first have Emily Johnson come check out your home and let you know what you need to do versus what you don't need to do in terms of helping you sell that home. You can save yourself a lot of time and potentially save yourself a lot of money and frustration by doing that first. Okay? Step one. She's awesome. She'll love you for it, and you'll love her for it. Home buying, home selling, Emily Johnson.